You've probably heard it 100 times. Focus on yourself. Don't care what others think. And for a few minutes, it feels good, like you're finally in control. Then reality returns. The same noise, the same comparisons, the same need to be seen. Because focusing on yourself isn't just about cutting others off. It's about learning how to stand still when the world pulls at your strings. It's about mastering your silence, not escaping their chaos. Stoicism isn't motivation. It's calibration. It doesn't hype you up. It brings you home. So if you're tired of chasing peace through noise, pause here. Let's go deeper. Because this time, you won't just focus on yourself. You'll finally understand what that truly means. So let's begin, not with noise, but with awareness. At some point, you'll realize no one is coming to rescue you. Not your family, not your closest friends, not even the person who once swore to love you forever. That silence may feel like abandonment, but it is not a coffin. It is a forge. When the noise of concern dies, you are left alone with the raw material of your life. And in that furnace of solitude, something harder than comfort is born: clarity. That realization is not cruelty, it is freedom. This journey will carry us through 9 movements, each one a room where another illusion dies and a deeper strength appears. By the time we cross the middle point, I'll hand you something rare. A hidden key, a practice so simple and unusual that it can shift the way you carry yourself the very same day. Most speakers won't share it because it is too personal, too direct. But you will hear it here. The title promised that when you accept no one cares, everything changes. That promise begins now. So let me ask, if every cheer vanished tonight, if every witness turned their eyes away, would you still dare to claim your own life? Take a deep breath, steady yourself, and let's step inside. If no one claps, do you still move? Steve Jobs once said, "Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me." In 1985, he was forced out of the very company he had built, humiliated in front of the world. Yet in that silence, stripped of applause, he found clarity and returned years later with ideas that reshaped technology forever. Think of that small, awful second when the email arrives. Silence louder than any insult. That story hides a truth most of us resist. Nobody is obligated to notice your pain. Nobody is staying awake at night planning how to lift you. From childhood, we've been taught the opposite. Parents said, "Tell us if it hurts." Teachers promised, "Raise your hand and help will come." Lovers swore, "I'll always understand." And so we grew up expecting our suffering to be visible, as if agony carried its own alarm bell. But here's the hard fact. Most alarms only ring inside your own chest. Picture this. A man sits at a family dinner, his fork idle, his voice fading. He waits for someone to sense the weight he carries. Around him, knives scrape, laughter bounces off the walls, small talk fills the air. Nobody notices, not because they despise him, but because they are drowning in their own currents. Silence is not a universal language. It is only heard by those who choose to listen. That realization hurts at first, but it can also be your release. Being unseen doesn't mean you lack worth. It means others are preoccupied. Too many surrender the wheel thinking, if they don't come, I can't move. But the car stalls only because the driver left the seat. Nietzsche once reminded us, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. In simple terms, if you build your identity on being noticed, you will spend your whole life feeling invisible. Picture no replies, no calls. The world keeps spinning. Do you vanish with the silence or begin? This is your first reclamation, Stop waiting for others to validate your storm. The wheel was always in your hands. No rescue, just responsibility. That's not loneliness. That's agency. That's the end of performance and the beginning of becoming. From this moment on, your silence is not emptiness. It's command. And command begins where performance ends. If this truth found you tonight, let it awaken calm, not anger. Leave a trace below. What part of your life will you quietly take back control of? Here's the reversal. Pain sold for attention never heals. The strange truth is this: the more we perform our pain to be noticed, the less healing it brings. Suffering can be real, but once it becomes a show, its power to transform disappears. Think of that friend who always begins a conversation with a sigh. At first, people listen, nod, offer sympathy, but over time, the circle around them grows thinner. Not because others are heartless, but because constant rehearsed misery empties the room of air. What once felt authentic slowly becomes static in the background, and the world encourages it. Post a dramatic rant online, and likes arrive like candy. Share heartbreak in detail and comments pile up. But does it mend the wound or keep it raw so strangers can briefly applaud? It's like flashing an unbandaged cut. Skin never hardens, scars never form, and the wound becomes currency for fading attention. I've done it too. One time I exaggerated how exhausting my week had been, hoping someone would marvel at my endurance. Instead, a colleague looked at me and said flatly, "We're all tired." Brutal? Yes, but it freed me. Sometimes one honest sentence shakes you awake more than 100 sympathetic nods. Cleanthes, one of the early Stoics, once warned, "Do not show your sore finger to the crowd." He didn't mean suppress your struggles. He meant protect them. Not everything sacred should be paraded for pity. Healing often prefers silence, the kind that allows dignity to breathe. Dignity grows in quiet the way roots grow underground, hidden but holding the whole tree steady. So pause for a moment. Imagine holding one struggle like a secret gem in your pocket, not hidden from shame, but kept safe because it belongs to you. Feel how different that is from placing it on display for shallow applause. Your worth was never meant to be measured by how visibly broken you appear. Keep some battles private and let your actions, not your wounds, speak. Keep your wounds private long enough for them to become wisdom, not performance. What if your best defense is no defense? There is a strange freedom in not rushing to defend yourself. Picture this: you're at a family gathering and someone makes a comment that slices a little too deep about your choices, your parenting, your career. Instinct says to launch into defense, to prove your worth on the spot. But what if you didn't? What if you let the words hang in the air and refuse to duel with them? Most panic at silence, thinking respect comes from quick defense. But the more you explain, the weaker you sound. The less you justify, the stronger you stand. It's the same in love. A partner says, "Why didn't you text me back right away?" The temptation is to pile on reasons, traffic, meetings, dead battery. But here's the reversal: a simple, calm look and, "Because I was present where I was," carries far more weight than a tangled list of excuses. It's like a mountain facing the wind. The mountain doesn't explain why it stands where it stands. The wind circles, then moves on. I once stood silent when a colleague mocked my idea in front of others. He smirked and said, "That's ridiculous. Who would ever take that seriously?" The room broke into laughter. The old me would have scrambled, defending every angle, my voice climbing higher to prove I was right. Instead, I let the silence stretch. I looked at him, calm, unflinching. The laughter grew thin, then awkward. Someone shifted in their chair. By the next day, the same idea, unchanged, was taken seriously. Not because I fought for it, but because I didn't. Sometimes silence is sharper than any defense. It forces others to measure the weight of their own words. Epictetus whispered it centuries ago. Don't argue what a good man should be. Be one in plain words. Stop wasting breath convincing the crowd. Live it. Let time reveal what words cannot. The highest form of freedom isn't saying everything. It's not needing to. Alone is not empty. It's training. Solitude has always been painted as punishment. We imagine the empty chair, the phone that doesn't ring, the calendar with blank squares. But here's the reversal. What looks like emptiness on the outside often becomes power on the inside. Think of a Saturday where plans fall through. At first, you scroll endlessly, restless for distraction. Then something unexpected happens. You begin to hear your own thoughts, not as background noise, but as guidance. That stillness is uncomfortable at first, but it sharpens you. It's the training ground of resilience. In relationships, the fear of being alone keeps many tied to what no longer nourishes them. People stay in circles that drain them because silence feels unbearable. Yet ask yourself, what if that silence isn't exile but recalibration? What if those quiet hours are not absence but alignment? I remember walking through a crowded market abroad with Elena, my partner. Voices surrounded us in a language we couldn't understand. For a moment, I felt invisible. She leaned close and said, "Strange, isn't it? No one here knows us. Maybe that's freedom." Her words shifted everything. Suddenly, the roasted coffee, the shuffle of footsteps, the cascade of bright fabrics, all of it lit up. Solitude turned from ache to awareness in a single breath. The greatest empire is to rule oneself, and that empire is built in quiet days when no one watches. Each steady moment in solitude lays another stone, and the same law holds in the field. Real strength is forged alone. Most people fear being alone. They see it as emptiness, as rejection, as proof that something is missing. That's why so many fill every silence with chatter, every weekend with noise, every night with a glowing screen. But here's the contrarian truth. Solitude is not weakness. It is a forge. And the person who learns to stand alone becomes unshakable when the world shakes. Think about it. The strongest oak does not grow in a crowded garden where other trees shield it. It grows on the hilltop, battered by wind, shaped by storms. Alone, it learns to dig its roots deeper. So do we. Solitude is the wind that hardens us, the space that deepens us. History and philosophy remind us of this again and again. Alone time is not loneliness. It is the closest friend we often neglect. It is the harbor where we steady our hands before we sail again into the world. And think of great creators. Einstein walking alone with his violin, or Darwin spending years in quiet study. They weren't hiding from the world. They were drawing strength from solitude to reshape it. Yet today, solitude is misunderstood. Stay home too often and people whisper, "He must be lonely." Choose not to chase every social invitation and they ask, "Is something wrong?" But the truth is, solitude is not the absence of connection. It's the presence of self. Without it, every relationship becomes need, not choice. Every opinion becomes noise, not conviction. Picture this. After a long family quarrel, instead of adding more words, you step outside for a quiet walk. The streetlights flicker, the night air cools your breath, and slowly the anger untangles. Or at work, you close the office door for 10 minutes, no emails, no voices, just pen and paper. In that pause, ideas you couldn't see in the chaos suddenly appear. The danger isn't solitude, it's never facing yourself. Because the man or woman who cannot bear their own company will always be a prisoner to others. And the one who can sit in stillness, they become sharper, their mind clearer, like the surface of a still lake reflecting truth without distortion. A still mind is not empty, it is ready. To master peace, you must first master being with yourself. Few things cut deeper than unfair criticism. It strikes without warning, sometimes from people you trust, sometimes from strangers who barely know you. At work, it may sound like a manager dismissing months of effort with one careless line. This isn't good enough. At home, it could be your partner saying, in anger, you never listened to me. Among friends, it might be a careless remark. You always think you're better than us. Words like these sink into the chest, not because they are true, but because they feel unjust. And here is where most of us fall into the trap. We rush to fight back. We defend ourselves with louder words, hoping to erase the sting. That's not true. You don't understand. I work harder than anyone. But here's the paradox. The louder we argue, the smaller we appear. The more we explain, the more guilty we seem. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In other words, the insult itself carries no blade. It's your mind that sharpens it. Now picture another way. Imagine in that moment, at work, in family and love, you don't rush to speak. You pause. You breathe. You let the words hang in the air like smoke. Without your reaction, they lose weight. Without your defense, they cannot dig into you. Silence here is not surrender. It is strategy. It is proof that your dignity doesn't depend on someone else's opinion. Think of a great leader on trial in history. Accusations flew, but he answered with stillness. His silence revealed the emptiness of the charges. That is the quiet power of restraint. The truth is, silence reveals more about the critic than about you. Their anger, their insecurity, their impatience, all exposed the moment you refuse to add fuel. While they waste energy, you conserve it. While they wound themselves, you remain whole. Because sometimes the strongest voice is the one that chooses not to speak. The 5-second rule: inhale, hold, see, nod, stay silent. If you've ever stayed silent and watched truth unfold on its own, write it below. Someone out there needs to remember that silence can be strength. And if these words felt steady to you, subscribe. This is where calm becomes power. Marcus Aurelius warned, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" The insult lasts a moment, but the fallout of our reaction can last a lifetime. I remember a man who once came to me for guidance, a business owner in his mid-40s. He told me how one furious outburst nearly destroyed his company. An important client criticized him unfairly in front of others, and he snapped back with sarcasm. For a few seconds, he felt powerful, but within weeks, the client pulled out, employees lost trust, and his reputation sank. He admitted, "It wasn't their words that cost me everything. It was my reaction." Now imagine a different picture. You're provoked, words boiling on your tongue. Instead of shouting, you pause. You let silence do what fire cannot. That pause is not weakness, it's mastery. Just as a driver controls a car by holding the brakes, not the horn, you control yourself by holding your response. Here's the paradox. People think expressing anger shows strength, but often it only reveals how easily we can be controlled. The world pushes one button and we explode on command. Even in literature, this truth shines. In Homer's Iliad, the greatest warrior had one fatal weakness, his Achilles heel, and it wasn't his body, but his rage. The strongest people in real life do the opposite. They choose calm over conquest. Their silence and anger becomes their power. So what's the practice? Next time anger surges, step away for 20 seconds. Count your breath to 5. Ask, if I release this anger, will it solve or will it scar? That pause is your shield. Control ends where anger begins. Take back the boundary. Because anger itself is not the enemy. Your lack of control is. The one who controls his anger controls his fate. When fury rises, look at your hands and count to 20. Let silence do what fire cannot. Anger is not meant to be buried. It's meant to be mastered, like fire turning ore to steel. A close friend once told me he dreamed of opening his own shop. He was excited, full of plans, already picturing the shelves, the customers, even the smell of fresh paint on the walls. But instead of letting the idea grow in silence, he rushed to share it with a distant relative. The response? Don't be stupid. Shops always fail. You'll lose everything. That single conversation drained him. Days later, the plan was gone. Not because it was impossible, but because he gave away his fragile seed of purpose too soon, and someone's fear stepped on it before it could take root. This is what happens when we reveal too much, too early. Purpose is like a newborn flame. In the beginning, it needs protection, silence, and air of its own. If you expose it to the wind of other people's doubts, it flickers out before it ever lights the room. A seed doesn't need applause, it needs shade. Protect it until it grows roots. I've seen it again and again. People with brilliant ideas, but they trade them for approval too quickly. They speak before they act. They seek validation instead of vision. And every time the noise of others drowns out the voice within. Silence, then, is not emptiness. It is a shield. It's the space where you let your dream gather strength before exposing it to the world. Seneca once said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." And I would add, if you speak before you're ready, even the best wind won't carry you. Think of your own life. How many times have you said yes when you meant no? How often have you let the expectations of family, colleagues, or society steer your choices? Silence, deliberate, chosen silence, is where you step back and ask, is this truly my path or just their noise? Look at the greatest builders of history, innovators, artists, leaders. They all had moments of retreat, moments where they shut out the world to listen only to the compass inside. Purpose isn't found in applause, it's forged in silence. And what grows in silence must be guarded from spectacle. Not everything sacred belongs on stage. Not every truth is meant to be displayed. In a world addicted to sharing, we've been trained to believe that silence equals weakness, that if you don't post it, it didn't happen, that if you don't narrate your wound, you haven't healed it. But here's the reversal. The most powerful parts of you are often the ones you keep untold. Think of social media. Someone posts a long rant about betrayal. Comments flood in. Hearts, hugs, stay strong. For a moment they feel connected. But when the scroll moves on, the ache remains, often heavier than before. Why? Because performance gave temporary comfort, but robbed the pain of its sacred privacy. I once sat at a dinner where a man kept circling back to the same heartbreak. The first time he told it, people leaned in. "That's awful, you deserve better." But as he repeated it again and again, the room grew restless. By the fifth return, someone whispered, "He's still on this?" His pain hadn't healed. It had turned into theater. And theater, no matter how tragic, always loses its audience. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But proving yourself doesn't require an audience. Some victories belong to silence. Their strength seen only in the way you walk after. On the softer side, sometimes keeping a story close feels like keeping a small flame cupped in your hands. Not everything needs to burn bright for the crowd. Some fires are meant to warm only you. Guard the ember, not out of secrecy, but out of wisdom. The more mystery you protect, the more magnetic your presence becomes, because people sense there's something real they can't consume. Take a moment to think. Which part of your life have you been too quick to display? And what would shift if you guarded it instead, held it close, let it grow roots in private, sacred soil? Your peace doesn't need public validation. Guard what is rare. Let the mystery of your silence be its own kind of power. Every seed needs shadow before it can face the light. Rumors are like smoke. They twist, they spread, and if you chase them, you only end up choking yourself. I've lived this. In my own family, when I chose a different path than what was expected, whispers began. Some said I was irresponsible, others that I was ungrateful. The urge to defend myself was overwhelming. I wanted to argue at every dinner table, correct every lie. But a mentor once told me, if you spend all your time swatting at smoke, you'll forget to build the fire that shows the truth. So I stayed silent. I kept working. And slowly the rumors faded because they had nothing left to feed on. The people who mattered saw the results, not the noise. That silence became my shield. It felt like walking through a storm without opening an umbrella. Yes, I got wet, but I kept walking, and the clouds broke on their own. The Stoics echoed this wisdom. Epictetus said, "If anyone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against his words, but reply, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these.'" It sounds sharp, but it points to a deeper truth. Rumors say more about those who spread them than about the one they target. Rumors are stray dogs, fed by attention, starved by silence. Ignorance has a sound. It's loud, certain, and often wrong. But here's the twist. The more you argue with ignorance, the more it multiplies. It's like shouting at an echo. It only comes back louder. I remember a neighbor once lecturing me about my own craft, insisting he knew more, though he had never lived a day in it. Every part of me wanted to fight, to correct, to prove, but I chose silence. I let his words hang in the air with no resistance. Hours later, another friend in the room pulled me aside and said, "You didn't have to say a thing." He showed himself. That is the power of restraint. When ignorance talks, silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you refuse to waste your energy proving what time will reveal. Each time you choose silence, you're not surrendering. You're trusting that truth needs no defense. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength to answer ignorance with silence is to step out of its storm and keep your own clarity intact. Think of it like water. When the river is muddy, no amount of stirring makes it clear, but leave it untouched, and in time it settles, revealing the bottom. Your silence is that stillness. It lets the mud sink on its own. So ask yourself, the next time someone insists on a falsehood with all the volume of truth, will you spend your breath trying to outshout them? Or will you let silence expose what noise never can? Don't fan the smoke. Open the window. Let time settle the mud. Injustice feels like fire. It burns before it touches you. A rude boss taking credit for your work. A family member twisting the truth to make you the villain. A system that seems blind to fairness. Everything in you wants to shout, to demand, to fight. But here's the hard lesson. Rage against injustice often gives it more power, because when your enemy controls your reaction, they control you. I remember a friend who once lost a promotion he deserved. The decision was unfair, the politics obvious. He stormed into the manager's office, demanded an explanation, raised his voice. "This was mine, you know it," he shouted. The manager leaned back, expression cold, and replied, "Calm down. This outburst only proves why you weren't chosen." By the end, nothing changed, except his reputation, which never recovered. His anger gave the injustice longer life. The Stoics spoke of this again and again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What a paradox. When the world tries to pull you into its ugliness, your silence becomes the refusal to mirror it. But silence here does not mean passivity. It means stepping back, breathing, choosing the right moment and the right words. Sometimes it means letting actions, not arguments, prove your strength. Think of injustice as a thief. If you shout and chase wildly, you exhaust yourself while they slip away. But if you stay calm, watchful, and patient, you learn their pattern, and one day you stop them for good. A jeweler doesn't chase a thief in every alley. He fortifies the vault and changes the locks. That's justice with discipline. So the next time injustice confronts you, remember, the choice is not between silence and justice. It is between reaction and mastery. And the quiet choice may be the one that turns the fire into light. Insults are like hooks. If you bite, you're caught. If you stay still, they fall harmlessly to the ground. I remember once walking with a friend when a stranger shouted something crude from across the street. My friend spun around, ready to argue, ready to defend his honor. But what honor is there in wrestling with mud? I kept walking. He asked me later, "Why didn't you say anything?" And I answered, "Because not every voice deserves my breath." The Stoics taught this clearly. Epictetus wrote, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit." The insult itself isn't what hurts. It's our choice to swallow the poison, refuse to drink, and the poison loses all its power. Think about it. When someone hurls words meant to cut you down, they are really revealing themselves, not you. Their anger, their jealousy, their emptiness. To answer is to validate it. To stay silent is to expose it. True generals know. Patience wins more battles than rage. Here's the twist. Insults can be gifts in disguise. They train you to master your reactions, to prove to yourself that no one owns your peace but you. Strength wins fights. Restraint wins empires. So the next time an insult comes, ask yourself, will you let their words chain you, or will you let silence guard you? Dignity isn't decoration, it's strategy. A closed door can be a compass. Rejection is one of the sharpest knives we face. A partner says, "I just don't feel the same anymore." An employer says, "We've chosen someone else." A friend drifts away without explanation. In those moments, it feels like the world is closing its doors one by one. But here's the strange reversal. Rejection often saves us from the very places where our strength doesn't belong. Think about it. How many times have you looked back and whispered, "Thank God that didn't work out"? At first, it felt like devastation. Later, it revealed itself as direction. The invitation was never meant to flatter you. It was meant to guide you toward a path that fits. Albert Einstein once sent his early papers to leading professors of his time. Many dismissed him, some didn't even reply. One examiner called his ideas too radical and advised him to stick with clerical work. Imagine the sting, believing with every bone in your body, only to be waved off as irrelevant. Yet years later, those very ideas reshaped physics and altered humanity's view of the universe. Their rejection wasn't the end. It carved out the space for him to redefine science itself. Rejection isn't your grave. It's the doorway you were always meant to walk through. And when one door shuts, it doesn't silence your story. It clears the noise so you can hear where your true path begins. When rejection rearranges the map, you'll find routes you'd never chosen otherwise. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When someone closes a door, don't mistake it as exile. It is scaffolding, forcing you to build elsewhere, stronger and higher than before. Pause here. Recall one rejection that still stings. Instead of asking, "Why me?" try, "What did this push me away from? What new ground did it reveal?" This is not about pretending rejection is pleasant. It cuts. But wounds can also point, and when you stop begging for the door to reopen, you begin to see the countless doors that never required permission in the first place. Closed doors don't block your path. They redraw the map. If rejection ever redirected your life for the better, tell me what it revealed. Share your reflection. Someone searching for peace may find it through your words. When applause becomes oxygen, truth suffocates. Applause feels sweet, doesn't it? The nod of approval from your boss, the "you're amazing" text from a partner, the likes piling up on a post. But here's the trap. The moment applause becomes fuel, silence feels like death. You start performing not for truth, but for claps. Think of the performer who bows a little too long, waiting for the audience to rise again. Or the friend who tells a good story, then repeats it louder just to hear the laugh once more. The moment we crave applause, we hand over our freedom. I once saw an old pop star try to relive his glory days on stage. He sang the same songs that once filled arenas, but this time the crowd only clapped politely. Instead of letting the music speak, he pushed harder, repeating choruses, begging the audience to cheer louder. The harder he pushed, the more awkward it grew. They weren't moved, just watching a man chase echoes of a past gone. He clutched the mic like a lifeline. Ask yourself, what applause are you still signing your life away for? The Stoics warned of this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The irony is sharp. Why let strangers decide if your truth is enough? Here's the gentler angle. I once caught myself checking how many people noticed a story I posted. The number was smaller than I hoped. For a second, I felt hollow. Then I laughed, because I realized 100 invisible moments in my day carried more joy than that little counter ever could. Applause is fleeting. Today they clap, tomorrow they scroll. If your worth depends on their noise, you'll always be begging for an encore. Let applause be a bonus, not your air supply. When the noise fades, the self that remains must be real. Some skins must fall off for you to breathe. There comes a time when the version of you that once survived, people-pleasing, chasing recognition, explaining every move, simply stops working. It feels like wearing clothes 2 sizes too small. You can still squeeze in, but every breath hurts. At first, you fight to keep the old skin alive, but slowly you realize it's rotting, and clinging to it is what's killing you. To become who you're meant to be, the old self must die. History shows it too. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." The Stoics knew rebirth doesn't arrive with applause. It comes with silence, misunderstanding, even loss. People will call you colder, less available, more distant. In reality, you've simply stopped trading your peace for their comfort. Here's the strange part. When you no longer beg to be understood, you become undeniable. Your absence speaks as loudly as your presence. Your stillness carries more weight than noise ever could. You stop chasing doors to open because you've realized you are the door. This is the quiet revolution, not louder, not softer, but truer. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't beg for a witness. It simply becomes. Shed the costume. Keep the core. So let me leave you with this. If today feels heavy, maybe it's not failure. Maybe it's the first breath of a new self. The only question is, will you keep patching the old house, or will you finally step into the life that's been waiting for you? At some point in life, the noise will run out. The claps will quiet. The criticisms will lose their sting. Even the misunderstandings that once cut so deeply will dissolve into silence. And in that silence, only one figure will remain. You, standing with yourself, facing yourself, carrying yourself. That is where real power is born. Not in being noticed, not in being approved, but in learning how to breathe when no one else is watching. The world may never fully recognize your worth, and that's fine, because worth is not a mirror they hand to you. It's a fire you keep alive inside, even when no one else feels its warmth. Think of all the times you begged life to see you, through work, through family, through love. The truth is, those moments weren't wasted. They were training. Every overlooked effort, every unanswered call, every lonely night, none were endings. They were initiations, a slow preparation for the day you would finally stop chasing validation and start standing in your own light. So walk forward lighter now. Release the need to explain, to prove, to earn. Stop waiting for doors to open, and remember, you are the door. You are the passage you've been searching for. The Stoics knew it well. Strength is not in the applause, but in the discipline of showing up again and again, even when no one is clapping. Self-respect is not a gift handed by others. It's a promise you keep with yourself. You don't need to be seen to be real. You don't need to be understood to be whole. You don't need to be chosen to choose yourself. If these words helped you return to yourself, let that quiet strength ripple forward. Subscribe for the next reflection and share below. What will you guard in silence this week? One day, everything that once demanded your reaction will fall silent. No more applause, no more arguments, no more explanations to give. And in that silence, you'll meet yourself. Not the version built for others, but the one who endured, evolved, and emerged from every closed door. That's when you'll understand. Peace was never something to find. It was something to protect. And every moment you refused to break for attention, every time you chose dignity over drama, you were already becoming unshakable. So when this video ends, don't scroll away too fast. Sit in that silence for a few seconds. Let it remind you, the man or woman who can sit still when the world demands noise. That's who wins the quiet battles that matter most.